So today's lecture is probably the most important in the last six. This is the sixth and last lecture in Feeding the Entrepreneurship Onion. And as usual, the saying of the day, the question of the day is, what's your problem? Like, what problem are you addressing? So we talked in the last two lectures about being agile, and before that about competitive analysis. And today we're talking about customer development, and we'll see what that is. And most importantly, this is really the beginning of about a month of getting trained on creating an inspiring presentation, which you will stand on stage and deliver to people whom you want to follow you and join you in taking this project from a project to a startup. The event will be held on the 26th of March in the morning. We hope there'll be 100 to 150, maybe 200 guests coming to the lecture. President of Bar Ilan, Aretz Van, will open the event, and we'll talk a little bit more about how the event will be managed. So everything we've been doing until now is really gearing up to your project or your startup being ready to raise money, because you need money to run anything, to create anything, at the beginning of the next academic year, which is October 19. And guaranteed that if you will do everything before October, you will have very good prospects of raising money, raising a seed investment for your startup the next academic year. And from experience with a similar program that I've run, it will take you between 3 to 9 months to raise the money that you need. Now, how can I guarantee that you'll be successful in raising the resources for your startup? You'll be successful because in the summer you will commit your time, you meaning not just yourself but your team will commit your time to validating your business plan, validating your product with representative customers in the target segment that you want to serve. And as you recall from the previous lectures, you want to find an unserved or underserved market segment, which could be your beachhead. And this is a very intensive process. I'll talk a little bit more about what that process is. So this summer, from about, let's say, mid-June to mid-September, before the holidays start in Israel, it's going to be a very, very intensive process of customer validation. And since most customers are not in Israel, you do not want to build your startup on the basis of non-representative customers like Israel. But you want to go to the target market. If it's North America, you'll go to North America. If the target market is Europe, you'll go to Europe. If it's China, you'll go to China, and so on. So how do you do that kind of customer validation? I mean, it's a process where you go out and you do essentially sales calls. You're selling a product you don't yet have. It's not complete. And the objective is not to close sales. The objective is really to invalidate assumptions which are wrong and guarantee your business plan will have assumptions that are wrong because you've not met any customers yet, so it's in your head. To validate assumptions that are right, and in that process, when you create a bond, when you create a relationship with your representative customers, you will discover new assumptions you didn't even know that you don't know. So that's the process. That process requires tools for being successful. There is an entire methodology. So what will happen in the previous months, beginning in April, is until about mid-June, you will actually be creating these tools with which you will do the customer validation process. And that follows what we did, the introductory 101 of startups or entrepreneurship 101, peeling the entrepreneurship onion, which we've done in the past 6 weeks, 6, 7 weeks. And for the next 4 weeks, we'll be working with Daphna and Edith to create a really inspiring pitch with which you can pull in partners, whether they're co-founders, potential co-founders, and mentors who will be helping you. So the tools that we will be using, that you will be using to create what you need for customer validation are freely available, almost free. So you can buy the Startup Owner's Manual. I highly recommend it. It's a book written by Steve Blank and one of his accomplices. You can buy it in PDF on Amazon. You can order a hard copy book. It's really a very practical book on what to do in creating a startup when you don't yet have customers, when you need to validate. What you will do in months of April, May, and beginning of June is really learn how to do that yourself with a class on Udacity. Udacity is a MOOC, and the class is called the EP245, and it has a very simple name: How to Build a Startup. So it's about 8 to 10 hours, I think, something like that, in snippets of 2 to 4 minutes of short videos. You can binge on that in one weekend. I do not recommend it, but you could definitely cover the whole course in a few weeks, leisurely, while doing the homework, which is really creating the tools that you need for validation. So
let's take a start at business models and customer development. But before we even begin, one of the first questions I tend to ask is, what is a company? What is it that I'm trying to actually start? Just for the sake of this class, I think we ought to use this definition. A company is a business organization which sells a product or service in exchange for revenue and profit. So explicitly, for the purpose of this class, I'm eliminating nonprofits. Let me be clear, you can use the business model canvas and customer development to go through the process for nonprofits, but actually having some goals that are fairly concrete, revenue and profit, allows us to measure whether we're succeeding and failing in very clear ways. And that leads us to the question, what's a startup? You told us what a company is, but how does a startup differ? And for me, you have to know, I spent 20 years doing 8 startups, and I never could have given you a definition off the top of my head what a startup is. I always thought a startup is where we had free food, where there was a great small team, or you could bring your dog and whatever, but I never quite understood the purpose of a startup. So I'm going to give you Steve's definition of what it is you're actually doing. What is a startup is a temporary organization designed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. Now let's go back and parse this sentence, because this is pretty important. Number one is temporary. The goal of a startup is not to be a startup. A startup actually aims to become a company. Well, that's kind of interesting, because if you really think about it, at least if you're a web mobile startup, there's no such thing as a 10-year-old startup. There's a 2-year-old startup attached to an 8-year-old failure. A startup is a temporary organization. And what are you supposed to be doing? Well, while you think it might be building a product, or maybe if you're thinking harder, it might be get customers. Actually, no. A startup is actually designed to search for something. Well, that's kind of interesting. What is it that I'm supposed to be searching for? Let's see. Well, number one, you want to search for something that's repeatable. And repeatable means the same thing that works on Monday works on Wednesday, and works on Friday, and works next week, and works the next month. That is, I want to find sales and marketing and engineering processes that are repeatable. I also want to find them scalable. But scalable means I put $1 in, I get $2 out. Or I put $1 in, maybe I get $10 out. But I better not be losing money on a continual basis, or I'm called a out-of-business startup. Okay, I know I'm searching now for something repeatable and scalable, but what is it that I'm searching for? And what you're searching for is the business model. And that business model search It's the basis of the rest of the class. So let's take a look and see how we become a company.
So,
Is this free in the YouTube?
yes, this is free on Udacity. How to build a startup. That's the name of the class. It's free. You can go there right now or after this lecture. Think about it. So, Steve Blank has been around for quite a few years. Actually, he started one company called Epiphany, which merged with an Israeli company called Dealtime. The result was a company called Shopping.com that eBay acquired for, I think, $400 and some million years ago. And in some way, it's kind of embarrassing that the experience of Steve Blank and my experience and the experience of many, many, many hundreds or thousands or more of entrepreneurs have been quite the same. We used to do startups with kind of magical thinking, right? We think, okay, we have a great idea and we'll incorporate it as a company and we'll take some titles. I'll be CEO, you'll be CTO, you'll be VP R&D, and somehow this company will happen and will make money. And that has been the modus operandum for tens of years. Basically rooted in the idea that I have a great idea, and just by willpower, this thing will become, a successful company. Well, it doesn't quite work that way, and I think in the last 10 years, the methodology has emerged on how to do it. But let's hear again Steve Blank. He's really the founder of this methodology on what we used to do.
So what we used to believe for strategy is that you start any company with an operating plan and a financial model. What's an operating plan? Well, it's the business plan. And the belief was all I need to do is spend a lot of time writing this plan, and then all I need to do is execute it. And somehow magically, magical thinking said, if I thought hard enough, and if I was smart enough to do all the great market research in the library and looking up all the data, and then put together a forecast, the magic 5-year plan in the back of the business plan, somehow magically, all I needed to do was hire the people to execute that plan. If that doesn't sound silly to you now, don't worry, because it didn't sound silly for 40 years. But we now know that's kind of ridiculous. What we now know is that no business plan survives first contact with customers. The first year or so in a startup is completely unpredictable. What you think you're doing on Monday turns out to be completely wrong on Tuesday. And on Wednesday you discover something new, and on Friday you're almost out of business, but on next Monday you get sold for $1 billion. A startup is an incredible roller coaster, unpredictable series of events that there's no way you could put together in a 5-year plan. Yet somehow investors and educators thought that maybe we could just teach you how to put this all together in a nice spreadsheet. No one ever noticed that the only other people to do 5-year plans were these guys, the Soviet Union. And we kind of know how well that turned out as well. Though, much like the fallacy about business plans and financial forecasts, that lasted for about 80 years. The good news is, and we now know that business plans and financial forecasts first are just as silly as it was in the Soviet Union. So, no business plan survives first contact with customers. This doesn't mean we shouldn't have any planning, but it actually means what we need is planning before the plan. And what that really means is you need to figure out how to actually do some planning, and then you get to write the business plan. So let me be clear, I'm not suggesting we never want to do an operating plan, and I'm not suggesting we never want forecasts, but you need some real facts before you can do that. And one of the ways we're going to organize our facts is with Alexander Osterwalder's business model canvas. We'll talk about this canvas in some excruciating detail in the following lectures. But you should know we use the canvas for two things. One is, initially, we're going to use it to organize our thinking about all the hypotheses about every part of our business. But second is we're going to get out of the building and actually turn those hypotheses into facts, as we'll find out how to do later. And then, as we turn those hypotheses into facts, we'll be updating the canvas on a regular basis, and it will become a scorecard, a way to keep score for our progress of how much we've learned. So what this means is, instead of writing the operating plan and financial forecast first, we're going to use the business model canvas to actually capture all our hypotheses first. For the search for the business model, we're going to start with the model first, and then after we find the model, we get to write it up.
If there, can I ask something?
Sure.
If there is a stable, clear plan, משנה סדורה, and I'm sure everybody knows about it because it's here quite around. So why not everybody succeed?
That's right. You'll hear about that in a moment, but I just want to give you a kind of a story on why we've been doing the wrong thing for so many decades. So, you know, the concept of a company, a corporation, is relatively new. I think the first real big company was the East India Company that was created in the United Kingdom and actually got a license to manage India. That was a big thing. Go, you know, you have this whole country and that's your resource and you can manage the company. And they had shareholders and actually, you know, where they held the meetings was in the port because the ships would go to India and come back from India. And, you know, they were traders. They were very busy. They didn't have a big, nice room like this. They had some kind of a storage room. But for the meeting, they had a board, a long board, and they put it on legs. And that was called the board. And the only person who could get a chair was the most important person. So he was the chairperson, right, the chairman of the board. Why? Because there was a board, and you put the papers there, and you hold discussions around. And this was actually pretty good because it was short, you know, everybody's standing up. So corporations really started building up in the 19th century, 18th century, 19th century with the Industrial Revolution. And initially they were startups, right? They were taking risk. But very quickly they got organized in hierarchical fashion, pretty much emulating what armies look like. Right? You had the top general, he's like the president or the CEO, and then you had, you know, lower rank generals, they became the VPs, and then you had lower rank colonels, and they became the directors, and then you had, you know, foremen, they were sergeants, and then you just had, you know, soldiers, right? People are the machines. And in those kinds of businesses, companies that were created in this hierarchical fashion, there was not a huge amount of competition in most market segments. And it was pretty clear what your business is because you had customers. Customers fed you back requirements, what they needed. And you could actually create a business plan. You could actually create a 5-year business plan. Because you had customers, you had sales channels, you knew how to market your product. And most of your business was not new products. Most of your business is an existing product that you manufacture. You find the right channels, you deliver it to customers, you do maintenance on it, they pay you money, and everything is great. In the early 20th century, there was a huge demand for middle managers, right? Business exploded, and there was a need to create some kind of a methodology for managing companies. I think Harvard was the first university that realized that there is an opportunity to create a professional school. They had other professions. You had school for lawyers, you had schools for doctors, but there was an opportunity to actually teach middle managers or teach people who want to go into corporations, become middle managers, and eventually maybe rise to be the CEO or president. You could teach them business practices. And so came the idea of a business school, an MBA, a Master's in Business Administration. And that, I think, began sometimes in the 20s or something like that. Actually, the MIT Business School is called the Sloan Business School. It is named after the first CEO of General Motors. His So until then, there was really no methodology. Nobody was doing it in an orderly way. And as you know, or maybe you don't know, Harvard has 900 new students every year in the business school. So that has become a real powerhouse. In the 1960s or even 70s, startups started coming on the scene based on electronics. There were really no huge movement of startups. Startups, essentially in the 70s, could be relatively light. You did not need a lot of capital because you were using brain power, electronics, and later software. That was very different from, let's say, the startups of the automotive industry. In the early 20th century, there were many, there were tens of car companies. And eventually they narrowed down in the US to only 3. It didn't take a very long time. In the late 19th century, or mid to late 19th century, there were hundreds of new railroad companies, hundreds. And eventually they also consolidated. But there was no opportunity to create highly scalable, lightweight companies that did not need a lot of resources. So that really started with the birth of the transistor in Silicon Valley in the late 50s, 60s. And alongside with that, there was a new breed of financiers, right? So in the early 20th century, late 19th century, when Ford or Rockefeller needed money, they would go to Carnegie, they would go to Mellon, they would go to very rich people, to banks. And the banks could give them a lot of money and take some equity. But venture capital was a very, very new thing where you don't provide that much money and you take a lot of risk because you have no idea what the business is going to be like. That really started only in the, let's say, early 70s with venture funds like Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia a little later and so on. And there were very, very few of those kinds of companies. And there is a big lag, it takes a long time until you realize that something is kind of a different thing. And the lag from business school that was created in, I think, 1920s until this methodology was about 80 years. So for about 80 years, entrepreneurs in technology started new companies, new startups, as if they were corporations. I did my first startup within a company. In the early 1980s, I was responsible for a CAD/CAM company for the Japan market. We had, like all companies, a distributor. And I noticed that the distributor was not paying enough attention to us. There were big opportunities there. We had to go direct. So I put together a business plan for creating a subsidiary in Japan. It was actually quite easy because we knew how to do it. We've been doing it for a few years. It was just replacing a distributor with our own organization. We could forecast the revenues. We knew who our customers were. We talked to them. We knew how many software engineers we needed, how many salespeople, what the commission structure is going to be. Because we were a company. We were a company, we had a product, we were shipping that product. The next startup that I joined was in the mid-80s. In that startup, we wanted to create a totally new kind of product, an electronic design automation software for designing integrated circuits, and that would run on engineering workstations which were completely new. So we had an amazing team. We had people from Intel, from National, and so on. So what did we do? We did what we learned, what we knew how to do from big companies that had customers. So we worked for a really long time to create a business plan. There were a million assumptions there. None of them tested, right? We had 0 customers. We managed to get money from the chief scientist of the Israeli Ministry of Trade. There were no venture capitalists in Israel. We managed to get an investment from Pool, which was the Histadrut, labor organization, owned a corporation, and we behaved as if we were a company. And of course we failed. After 80 people, I think something like $80 million, we actually had no product. And in that company, what happened? The first thing I did, I managed the US subsidiary, all the business side. So the first thing I did is, before we had a product, I brought a sales guy. And they told him, go sell this thing. So he would go to customers and sell them, and of course, we had no product. And we didn't listen. Listening to customers was not at all in our plan. We knew exactly what we were doing. We were chip designers ourselves. We knew what the market needed, and we just didn't listen to customers. So he would go to potential customers and pitch to them and try to sell them, and he failed. He failed because our product was not interesting. They didn't want this product. They wanted something else. So what did I do? I did not go and listen to customers and tell my partners, the R&D in Israel, what was wrong. I fired my VP sales, and I hired another one. Well, he failed as well. So I fired him as well. And actually, I hired sales engineers, and we were going and meeting with customers. And to make a long story short, I quit. I said, look, we're doing too many things. None of them is good enough. We have to focus on one single product, put everything else on the shelf. Lay off, fire 80% of the people. We were burning too much cash, and the CEO did not really have, the courage to go to the investors and say, hey, look, we already wasted $5 million. Let's shrink down and try to do something. Well, I knew this was going to fail, and I left the company. But we didn't learn our lessons, right? So about 10 years later, I started another company with another partner. This was the beginning of the web. What did we do then? Well, we wrote a business plan. We presented the business plan to venture capitalists. Venture capitalists were still working in that mode. They looked at the business plan, and there were all kinds of assumptions, and there were spreadsheets, and the revenue was going to go like this, and we were going to have so many customers and so on. And of course, this did not happen, but we were amazingly lucky because we did something really early on. We were 10 years too early, but there was huge panic among the old incumbents in the industry. CompuServe, if you remember a company like that, AOL, and they just bought all these startups that existed, if they had a business or if they had no business. So we were lucky that we had an exit, and a pretty good exit, because the incumbents were in panic. But we had no business. If we were not acquired in 95, we would have been dead by 96, for sure. And we still didn't learn the lesson. And the next startup I did was exactly the same way. And then I became a VC. And what did I see as a VC? I was a venture capitalist for 5 years. I must have seen something like, personally, at least 500, maybe 600, 700 business plans. And they were all the same. They all looked as if somebody had a business, they knew what they were doing, and they were full of hypotheses that were actually wrong. So, what Steve Blank and what this methodology is showing is actually a pretty simple thing. It took about 40 years of venture capital, 80 years since, first business school was created, first MBA program, until we had this insight, or not me, other smarter people than me, that actually we could use a kind of scientific method, because it's all about having assumptions, invalidating them, validating them, and actually increasing luck. So your question, Ilan, was why do most startups fail? They don't fail because of technology. Most startups fail. 99% of startups fail. So if you define a startup as somebody who is starting to spend a lot of time on creating something new, maybe in addition to his day job, 99% of these fail. And they don't fail because they don't have money. They don't fail because the technology is bad. They fail because they think they're businesses, and they don't realize that the startup, even if you're incorporated and you give yourself a title, you're not a business. A business is an organization that has something that prints money. You do this thing, and cash flies out. That's a business. That's a company. A startup is looking for this machine, and the method of doing it is completely different. So let's look at another video. It's Steve Blank.
What we now know is most startups fail from a lack of customers than from a failure of product development. And that's really interesting. Even in Silicon Valley, where we probably take more technical risks per square inch or square foot than anywhere else in the world, we go out of business typically not because we didn't deliver a product. We go out of business because we didn't find enough customers to pay us enough money. That's a big idea. Because if you think about it, we have all these processes to manage the engineering process. Why? Because that is the biggest risk in a large company. But we had no processes to manage the customer risk. In fact, the best we could do is, in the old days, is hire a VP of sales who told you, oh, I have a great Rolodex or a great set of contacts. But we really had no formal process for searching for what customers' needs are. And in fact, we've just come up with one. And that's going to be a key part of this course. This search for the business model, this search for the truth, is called customer development. And customer development really has two pieces, the search and its execution. And in this class, we're going to be talking about the first two steps, customer discovery, customer validation, the pivots that connect them, and then if you're so lucky, we actually get to execute your business model in customer creation. The other piece that goes with the process in a startup is not only the customer development process, but an agile engineering process. One example is extreme programming, or XP, which basically is built around this idea of iteration and increment delivery of the product. This is a big idea. It says instead of building every possible feature on day one, we're actually going to incrementally and iteratively interact with customers, test each portion of the product, and see if what we're building actually has a home outside the building. So what this really means is that for process, instead of just going to execution first, hiring product managers, doing waterfall development, or maybe even Agile nowadays, we're actually going to start with a customer development process coupled with some kind of Agile engineering process. Which one you pick, I use XP as an example, but it could be whatever your favorite process is. And by the way, don't only think that Agile engineering, Agile development is about software. Toyota, the Toyota production system, actually had it for hardware decades before anybody in software ever thought about it. So you could be building products, anything from microprocessors to medical equipment to hardware, software, etc., using an iterative and incremental engineering process. And again, once you're done with that, of course you want to manage this in a formal process, but not before you do the plan.
So I think hopefully this is starting to bring together the previous 5 lectures that we've done. Why is Agile important? Well, Agile is important because you're going to make many pivots because you don't know yet what you want to do, and you'll discover as you do research, as you do this customer discovery and customer validation. And we'll have one more short video on that.
So let's just take a look at the last piece, which is why you're here. How do we teach entrepreneurship? Well, in the past, entrepreneurial education was about execution. We're going to teach you how to write a business plan. We're going to teach you how to put together the PowerPoint for the VC presentation, where if we're doing it really well, we'll have you do lots of research. But it really assumed it was all about execution. Well, we now know that's just simply not the case. Entrepreneurial education, the reason why you're taking this class, is about the search for the business model. And we're going to teach you how to search. And so for that, what that means about entrepreneurial education is that eventually we do need you to know everything an MBA knows. Eventually, if you're successful in growing your startup into a large company, you're going to need to know about accounting and HR and organizational behavior and global leadership and etc. But at first, you need a different set of skills that just never existed before. And so welcome to the first class of its kind that's going to put search first, and that's a radical change. It's not just one more methodology. So this class is going to teach you all the skills about strategy and process and organization. And eventually, if you build a successful company, will then allow you to write the plans and operating documents and financial spreadsheets to actually execute the company. So hold on to your seats. We're about to get started. And let's jump into business models and customer development.
So what takes place in Silicon Valley in accelerators like Y Combinator or Techstars, or in entrepreneurship programs at Stanford, Berkeley, Caltech, MIT, and so on, is exactly this process. Okay? So research, which is customer discovery and customer validation, and the iterations between these two, is done, for example, at Stanford in entrepreneurship programs in 3 months. So students, usually graduate students, but not only graduate students, they have an idea. They come to the class, they have mentors, and that's what they do in addition to taking other courses. They go, they create a set of hypotheses, they create tools, a business model canvas. The business model canvas is one poster. You can see one. We are a startup. Unbox is a startup. We have our own business model canvas. So you can come and look at that. It's no secret. What we're doing now is we're doing our customer validation. You're a part of our customer validation. Is this going to work? How do we know? We cannot just ask researchers if they want to become entrepreneurs. We actually have to go through this and figure out what works and change and make it actually work. So in Silicon Valley, this happens very rapidly, very intensively. And in a way, it's easy because if you have a new startup you want to create in Silicon Valley, the Bay Area is something like 8 million people. You can fly down to LA in 1 hour. You can fly up to Seattle. So the West Coast is very available. And you have tons of customers. You have many, many customers there. And they represent a huge market. The North American market, or let's say the US and Canada, is something like 400 million people. And you could sit in Palo Alto and you could actually do this process very effectively. So this whole methodology started in Silicon Valley and then migrated or moved or was replicated in the East Coast, in the Boston area and in New York. Elsewhere in the United States, it is not really practiced very much because you need a few things to make this effective. You need to have an entrepreneurial spirit. You need to have customers, and you also need to have a venture capital industry which can fund you later on. So if you try to do something like this in Columbus, Ohio, I think there are no venture funds there. So nobody will invest in you. And eventually, you need to go and present to somebody. And you may think it's kind of weird, but venture capitalists make early stage investments no more than 20 miles away from their offices because it's a very intensive process of working together with entrepreneurs. So if you start a startup in Columbus, Ohio, nobody from Silicon Valley or from Boston or from New York is actually going to invest in you in your first investment, because they don't have time to fly over. So that is why one of the reasons that Mark Zuckerberg actually moved to Silicon Valley before he even started his company. That is why Jeff Bezos actually moved to Seattle to start Amazon. Now in Israel we do have a venture capital industry, but we have no market. So some aspects of this methodology have come to Israel, and they are practiced by accelerators. Everything except for customer validation. But if you don't interact with customers, you will fail. So if you do as if you're doing customer discovery and customer validation, but you don't actually hit customers, you're going to fail. And seasoned entrepreneurs, they already know this. They know it from their experience, so they don't need this kind of training. They go, they travel to the US and so on. And as scientists, you know that if you're doing an experiment, you have to have a significant enough sample of customers, right? So when you're doing some experiment in materials research or in agriculture or in whatever field, you're not just going to experiment on one mouse, right? You're going to experiment on, it used to be 20, then it became 40. For some experiments, you actually want to do it on hundreds of subjects or hundreds of mice or hundreds of customers. So if you really want to reduce the risk and raise the luck quotient of your company in the discovery and validation phase, in that search phase, you need to talk to tens of customers. Otherwise, you run the risk of basing your entire business model, your entire company, on one customer who may be very, very unique, and you will not be able to replicate it. And doing it from Israel is hard because there are no customers here. So you actually have to go overseas. That costs money. It means you are not with your family for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And that is what most people don't do, but that is what is being done here. So what we're doing here is we're separating the customer discovery and the customer validation process. So the next 2.5 months are actually going to be customer discovery, creating all the tools. And what will be done in the summer, when researchers have more time, is actually going overseas and validating your business model and doing these pivots in the global market. So I want to run one more short video before I'll take some questions here. And all of these short YouTube videos are from that class, How to Build a Startup. You can start taking the class today. You can do it over the weekend. Within the next month, you can come fully prepared, and I would very much advise to do that for the next chapter of Unbox.
Now, one of the interesting things about customer development that makes startups very different from large companies is that customer development is done by the founders. Well, why the founders? And it turns out that there's a couple of interesting things, and this is about human nature. There's no technology involved. In a traditional startup in the old days, you would hire a VP of sales who would go out because you were smart, this was your idea. You'd say, go try to sell this, go talk to customers. I'll just hire somebody to do this. But remember, a hire, so an employee doesn't have the vision. They're just executing what you told them. And guess what happens if they go out and talk to people who say, this is the worst idea we ever heard of. No, we won't buy it. What happens is they'll come back and tell you, and the first time they do this, they'll say, well, you're just not describing it right. You send them back out for another couple of days or weeks or months, and they'll come back again. And if you're like any passionate founder, they'll go, I hired the wrong executive, you're fired. Now just imagine we run the exercise, this time, not with a proxy, a head of sales or marketing, but we force you to get out, you the founder, to start talking to customers. And if you got that same exact feedback, it might take you 3 customers or 5 or 30, but eventually smoke will start coming out of your ears because cognitive dissonance is now coming into effect. Is that you might realize that your story or vision isn't right, but unlike a proxy, a VP of sales or marketing, you have the power to change the company's strategy. You have the power to change the entire value proposition. To say, well, what if we had these features? And customers might say, nah, still not. But then if you say, well, what if we had this? They might say, oh, if you could do that, then you could have my check right now. Now, if you're a smart founder, you'd say, oh, let me get right back to you. Because what you'll do is you'll go test that new feature with 5 or 10 other customers. And all of a sudden, you realize that you had the wrong feature set. And just by adding this small little change, you can now actually get a whole series of paying customers. Only founders could do that. And what we did in the past is we would wait till first customer ship, we'd wait till sales didn't match the revenue plan, and we'd actually make these changes by firing executives, instead of actually having the founders engage in day one. So it's the founder who would change the product, make pivots, and hear customer feedback firsthand. And that's the idea of getting the founder outside the building.
So there are 2 related concepts here. One is that founders need to do this, because you cannot rely on employees. You cannot send something there. And I've already had a few of the people in this program saying, hey, I found this guy is going to be my business development guy. you don't want a business development guy, because that business development guy is going to go out and meet with customers and come back maybe with the right feedback, and you're going to dismiss it. You say, well, he's not listening correctly, he's not telling the story correctly, he's not answering questions correctly. But actually, you hire a business development guy when you're in a transactional mode, when you're going to make a transaction. I have a product, it's proven in the market. Here is the catalog and the price. And you can trust me because we have so much money in the bank. We're a real company. Look at my board of directors. We've raised $50 million. We're profitable. We're not going to go under. I'm not going to destroy your career. So you can buy from me and we shake hands, and that's called a transaction. But you're not in transaction mode. You're in search mode. And in search mode, you have to develop a relationship with the customers that you're meeting. They're not your customers. They don't know you. You're some dinky little Israeli startup that has no money and has nothing. You have to create a relationship of trust so they can trust that they can tell you their real feedback and not bullshit you, right? For that, you have to create a relationship. So the search process is not a relational process. It's not a transactional process. It is a relational process. You have to meet with people. You meet with people, you talk with people. You're not really selling. It seems that you're selling because you go to a customer and you're saying, well, you're a farmer and you have a herd of sheep, 2,000 sheep, and I have this product, and here's what it is, here's what it's going to cost, and so on. That's not what you want to do. What you want to do is say, thank you so much for making the time to meet with me. I heard you had some sheep. I have a product for sheep. And we think that we can solve these problems for you. We can solve, sheep are eating too much. We can make meat less and produce more wool or whatever it is. The sheep are getting sick. We can make them less sick. We can make them more robust, and so on. And this will be good for your business because such and such. And the farmer might say, well, I don't have a problem. Food doesn't cost me any money, or whatever it is. Because you have a whole bunch of assumptions. That person you're sitting in front of, you need to create a relationship with, because you're introducing your business model, not showing them the poster. You're actually having some kind of a conversation piece. But you need to have a human-to-human relationship to get real feedback. And in fact, this representative customer is not your customer. He's a kind of design partner. He's helping you design your business because he actually knows what he needs and what other people like him need. And you have no idea. And that is how a product is made. And you can do that very, very, very efficiently and very intensively in a few short months. So I'll go back to this. And by now you may have a better idea of why we're doing what we're doing. In the end, where we want to get to is in next October, you will have everything needed to go and raise funding for your company. You will be able to do this because in the summer, you executed in an intensive way a customer validation process or methodology by creating relationships with tens of representative customers who will give you honest feedback. And you will have mentors who will help you digest the feedback and understand what kind of pivots, what kind of changes you need to make. And it's an iterative process. You will go back to these same customers and to some others and say, well, I listened to you. It appears that nobody is really interested in nobody has problem 1, and problem 2 is more interesting. Or problem 4 discovered when I talked to some other customers like you. And you do these iterations to try to narrow down to the simplest product, to the product with the least features that you can develop to customers who are willing to pay. And to do this effectively, in the next 2.5 months, or starting in mid-April or so, you will actually be developing the tools, but not on your own, because you're busy being a researcher. You cannot do this on your own. It's too much work. All of this stuff is way too much work. So you need to have some partners. Now, the best partners you can have, the best co-founders, you need to have co-founders. Remember, the validation process is done by founders, not by employees. You're not in a position now to go and hire employees. You're in a position now to inspire people who have complementary skills and competencies and bring them on as your co-founders. So actually, by mid-June, you will have a founders agreement, and the equity of each of your partners is going to be there. You will have founded a company. There will be a company. We'll put some money into that company, and you will go and execute that search. So the best kind of partner that you can get right now is somebody you know, even if that somebody is not perfect. The truth is, nobody is perfect. But if somebody you know is not perfect, and you know his imperfections or her imperfections, you know how to work around that. You know how to work with that person. What we're going to do is also do this Impact Day on the 26th of March, bring a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, people who are interested in working on big problems, big challenges, big solutions that can have global impact, with researchers who are smart and have some intellectual property, and actually there is some kind of an asset around which you can build a company. The purpose of the Impact Day is for you to stand on stage and inspire many such potential entrepreneurs, potential co-founders, and mentors who will later be mentors of the program, to get them to want to join you in creating this startup. Because alone, you cannot do it. Even though we're spending a lot of money and a lot of effort, especially Sharon, on creating this Impact Day, the best thing for you is not to pick anyone who comes on the Impact Day, but to already have somebody whom you know and trust, even if they're not perfect, because that's the best kind of partner. Now, what can you offer these partners, these co-founders? You cannot offer them money, right? You cannot offer them salary. And if they will only come and work for salary, keep them in your list of future employees. They're not co-founders. You need co-founders who are willing to take a risk, okay? Otherwise, they're not going to be co-founders. All you can offer them, really, is equity in your company and the ability to actually control the process and to impact what this company is going to be, what its products are going to be, what the business model is going to be. So these are the kinds of people that you can pull in to cooperate with you. And that will happen on the 26th of March. The whole purpose of the training over the next 4 weeks is that you stand up and you're really delivering a compelling and inspiring story. So when we finish, all the people in this program will go out on stage, will pitch for 5 minutes, then we're going to have round tables, you will each go to your own table, and then people, entrepreneurs and mentors will flock to your table. You're competing with each other for attention, with your inspiration, and we'll have a kind of a speed dating process. We'll start right there, and then on that day, we'll collect information from you, who looks interesting to you. We'll collect information from them on which startup looks interesting to them. We'll sit for a couple of days and do what we think might be the best matching, and then we will actually manage the process of making sure that you meet them in the following 2 weeks. And it's not just one meeting. You need to be comfortable with these people. Remember, you're going to actually enter into an agreement with them to form a company. You need to have a lot of mileage. You need to have a lot of discussions with these people, not just in your office, maybe in a coffee shop, maybe in their home. It's kind of getting married very rapidly. And that is, of course, you can get divorced later. But if you split up with your partners in the following 2 months or during the validation phase, it will take you a year to get over the divorce and restart. So this is a very, very, very crucial thing to do. And if you're serious about creating a startup, start now, today, thinking really, really hard. Who do you know that you can pull into your company, into your idea? And those are people who will be really, really excited and really passionate. If you have to convince them too much, they're probably not the right people. It's a big job to do, but alone you will not be able to execute in this process. So why will you be able to raise money come next October? Because if you do this whole process, you will have everything that investors want. You'll have a founding team, even if it's only you and somebody you bring in as a CEO, or if you're going to be the CEO, if you have the time to be CEO, maybe somebody who will be your co-founder and VP of the business, or VP of strategy, or VP of R&D, or whatever it is. The titles don't matter. You all have to meet customers. There's no division of labor here. You all have to meet customers and listen to them, and digest and make changes. You will improve in leadership. The act of doing customer validation and meeting with tens of customers and actually getting them to tell you what their problems are and getting them to feel comfortable enough that they can reject some of your hypotheses, that's an act of leadership. These customers are not transactional customers. These are people who are joining your team. They're taking a risk. The risk they're taking is a career risk. You will have shown that you have persistence, right? You're not giving up after one encounter. You get beaten up, you get slapped, you get a box in the face, you get up, you go again. But you become smarter every time because you hear and you digest and you make changes. You will have shown that you're listening, that you have the ability to listen. You're listening to mentors, you're listening to your partners, you're listening to representative customers, and the result of listening is not just that you listen, you're actually flexible, you're making changes. You're making changes at a time where you have nothing. That's the best time to make changes. The biggest mistake would be if you're so amazing and so lucky and so talented and you go and raise $5 million now, you will be afraid to make changes most probably later on because you will feel that you've sold this thing to investors and now you cannot change. And you will have people develop the product that nobody wants, and it will be hard. You'll have to fire these people because maybe you cannot sustain the burn rate, how much your spending rate. So before you have a product, before you have a full team, you will be able to show that you have these competencies. And if you go and meet with 30, 40 customers, and you have a total of, 50 meetings, 40 meetings, 30 meetings, you will actually have deep market knowledge in your domain. Your knowledge will be very, very deep compared to any other Israeli entrepreneur who goes to a venture capitalist to raise money. And actually, if you do this really, really well, you will have some customers who will say, what you've shown me now in our third meeting, after you've made the changes, that's really a product that I want. So I want to be one of your first customers to test this product or to buy this product. You will actually have a pipeline of waiting customers. And when you go with this package to investors, even if you don't have a patent yet, even if you have nothing developed yet, even if you don't have a prototype, they will invest in you. Because investors know that they invest in people. They don't invest in an idea. They invest in people. And these are the competencies. These are the traits, attributes that they want founders to have. It's all about people. So it doesn't matter that you don't have a patent yet. And by the way, your patent is not even important to customers. Customers don't care about your intellectual property. Customers care about you understanding their problems and providing solutions. Okay, so this Thursday, the first batch of people in the program are going to get training from Daphna. And before you meet with Daphna, which is either this Thursday or next week, come to me with your first storyboard. Okay, you'll have maybe 5 slides. Don't try to create, fancy graphics or anything like that. I want to hear your story. I want to hear your hook. So if you're going to speak for 5 minutes on stage, you'll have to have a hook that pulls people in. If you're boring, if it's not interesting, if it doesn't impact, my heart, I will stop listening to you, right? Not be here. I mean, in the conference on the impact day, if you don't grab people emotionally in the first 30 seconds, they will not listen to you for the next 4.5 minutes. Then you need to tell them a story that will sink in very easily, that requires no intellectual effort. And then you need to say what you're asking for. Why are you standing on stage? I'm looking for a CEO. I'm looking for a VP R&D. I'm looking for some technical guru. I'm looking for a hacker. I'm looking for somebody who's going to be a hustler. Most importantly, I'm looking for somebody who will take risks together with me to create this most amazing company and have this great global impact. And in your pitch, you should really somehow tell the story of what is your grand purpose. You're doing something big. It's not something small. It's disruptive, which means you're not changing, you're not replacing another product. You're actually doing something that could replace an entire business or industrial ecosystem. And you have a really compelling beachhead where you can start and actually create life. Because companies, startups that succeed, how they differ from startups that fail. Startups that succeed were definitely alive after year 1 and after year 2 and after year 3. That's why you need a beachhead. So a fantasy or a big purpose is not enough. You have to have a place to start. And that's where you will be doing your validation. You'll be doing your validation in the beachhead. So that's it for today. Questions? Do we have to get out of here or can we take some questions?
You can take.
Okay.
When the product is not actually going to the final users, to the end user, through a company. So actually my product is a component in a setup, the entire setup of a company. For example, it could be a climate control of a poultry house, while I'm providing one sensor. So in this case, how can I reach customers in order to ask them and get feedback and all of this?
Well, first of all, so you've already said that you have some things that you've decided, probably with not talking with customers. You've already decided what your product is. But you cannot decide unilaterally what your product is. You really have to go to customers and discover if they want it. In the end, all products, not all products, but your final customer, if you have something for poultry, right, for chicken farms, the person who operates the chicken farm, the farmer, in the end, has to make a decision. Is he going to gain something from what you're doing? Okay? So you have to go to that final customer.
Decision was done with quite a few customers.
How many?
After.
Okay. So you did some kind of survey. How did you do that survey? Okay. So you went to poultry farms in Israel, I assume.
Yes.
Is that your market? Is that your representative market? I submit to you it is not.
No, it's not.
Go to Arkansas, they have shitloads, literally, of poultry farms which are huge. You have to decide, you really have to talk to end users.
I'm after this thing.
Maybe you are, maybe you're not.
How can I...
I'm not sure. I'm not sure you're after
How can I
this.
validate it without the company in the loop?
You've made a decision. Your decision is that you're going to produce a component for somebody who sells some kind of automation to poultry farms or something like that, right?
It's equivalent like the one of the cars. If he sell one box in the car, he cannot access
Okay, great.
customers.
So no, that's not what he said. So let me correct you. So Moshe, who talked to us, Moshe has a component in a car, a cybersecurity component in a car, which he knows will not be fully manufactured by him, but will be integrated by what's called a tier 1 supplier. Moshe is smart. He did not bother even to go and talk to the tier 1 suppliers because he's a competitor for them. They don't want this in there. They don't want to work with startups. So Moshe He didn't go to Bosch, he didn't go to Magna, he didn't go to any of these companies. Moshe went to Ford and GM and Porsche and Volkswagen and Daimler and these companies. Let me,
Not to the end user.
that's right, because they're selling the product. They're selling this product to an end user, okay? Now, the end user, in his case of the product, the end user is not sensitive enough to these issues of cybersecurity. So he has to find a customer who has a problem. So you have to find a customer who has a problem. In the case of an automotive company, a cyber event can cost an automotive company damage of billions of dollars in recalls and in brand reputation. That's where the problem lies today. But if you are producing this, which problem, who are you solving? What's the problem that you're solving? If you're solving a problem for a poultry farmer, a poultry farm, that they can increase their revenues, they can reduce their costs, they have possibly other benefits, you have to talk to them. Part of your business model canvas is what channels are you going to cut? How will they buy from you? Most probably, these poultry farms will not buy from you because somebody needs to integrate this into a bigger solution. They will tell you, they will direct you as to who those channels or integrators will be. But if you don't have a value proposition for them, you have no business. And the problem is, if you go to the integrators, you don't know what the business problems of integrators are. And they may not care about this problem at all. They may have a competitive product that is not as good as yours, but it's good enough and customers spend money on it and they don't want to present an alternative. Okay? So you need, first thing, to say, who has a problem and what do I sell them? In fact, you may discover that you could sell them something bigger than what you have. Okay? You may discover that there is a segment that will actually buy directly from you, and that will be your beachhead. And that's why you need to go and talk to tens of customers in a representative market. So in Israel, there are mid-sized poultry farms. In Arkansas, there are poultry farms with, I don't even know how to count how many chickens they do every year. Other questions?
Yeah, you talked about the 20 miles rule. 20 miles rule about investing in a company that is 20 miles away from
Yes.
you. Now, I have a potential CEO that sits now about 2,000 miles from me. Is it feasible?
So, the DC wants to be close mostly to the CEO. So if your CEO is sitting in Paris, or somewhere there, or the US,
It's north.
a bit north, in Germany, in Brussels, wherever, Holland, Netherlands, and you want an investment from an Israeli fund, if you want an investment from an Israeli fund, because there's more venture capital in Israel than there is in all of Benelux, I know, there's very little there, okay? He will have to spend a lot of time here, so they get comfortable with him, and this would be the base of operations. If the base of operations is going to be in the Netherlands, then he needs to raise money there. But in any case, he needs to come, to investors with this package. So as long as it comes with this package, if he is in the Netherlands, he will be, he will have to raise money, maybe in the Benelux, most probably, in the city where he's operating. And that's actually a big problem if there's not enough capital. So I was a student in an accelerator for smart energy in Houston. And Houston is the energy capital of the world. And we were all doing, smart energy. And, you have all the big companies there, BP, Total, EDF, Exxon, Mobil, Shell, and so on. But there was only one small venture capital fund in Houston that managed about $30 billion. And eventually, after 5 or 6 cohorts, the accelerator shut down because they could not bring VCs from Silicon Valley, would not even bother to get on the plane to come there. So the successful startups actually had to move over to Silicon Valley to raise money. In a program that I ran in smart mobility, I experimented. I had an amazing Ukrainian entrepreneur, and another one from Latvia, and another one from Spain. And there is no venture capital in those places. They could not raise money. So the Ukrainian guy actually moved to the US. The Latvian guy moved to the US. The Spanish guy created a lifestyle business. Very, very small, really not interesting. So that's something to really, really think about, because if you do the best thing and you can't raise money, you're stuck. Anything else?